All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. I was just telling our folks at Fort Ticonderoga that are joining us today that we have the most dedicated teachers. I saw some of you last night on another session. You all are so faithful to continue to jump in to learn new things and experience some new professional learning and all of those kinds of things. So thank you so much for giving your time to do that. And we also want to thank our colleagues at Fort Ticonderoga for being with us today. Really nice to meet you, and we're looking forward to learning more about it. I've been looking at the website today a little bit, looking at the teacher and educator resources. I'm excited to see in one of those little squares that we have someone that looks like it's going to be a part of the virtual piece of this. I'm really excited to learn about that. But since I'm just guessing, I'm going to let Rich go ahead. We have Rich Strum with us today, and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Stuart Lilly, who you see on screen there waving. And I'm going to turn things over to him shortly. But I wanted to share some things. We wanted to share things here at Fort Ticonderoga that we have available for both teachers and students. Our programs for teachers are available. Some of them are virtual so that you can do them from Kentucky. Some of them are programs that take place here at Fort Ticonderoga, but there's some opportunities to help you get to Ticonderoga. So I'm going to start with our teacher programs, and we're going to be looking forward to the 2023-2024 season. And Jackie, I just want to make sure you can see my PowerPoint screen.
I can.
Okay, good. There's nothing worse than getting all the way through and finding out it's not working.
We would not let you do that.
All right. Fort Ticonderoga hosts two big academic conferences each year. In September each year, we do our seminar on the American Revolution. And this program starts on Friday evening and runs through noon on Sunday. It brings in outside scholars from around the country and actually internationally as well. In September this year, we have a guest scholar coming from the Netherlands to join us to talk about aspects of the American Revolution. These programs are available in person, but they're also available as a virtual program, and we offer teacher scholarships to attend both in person or teacher scholarships to attend online, and the application deadline for that is August 15th. There's much more information on our website if you just go to fortticonderoga.org, and if you click on the Learn and Explore button, and in the drop-down, you'll see one of the menu items is lectures, workshops, and conferences. And you can download a copy of our brochure. It has the listing of all the speakers and get more details there. And if it's something that a teacher is interested in applying for a teacher scholarship, there's a link on the webpage to do that as well. And that will give you the option to apply to be here in person or to join us virtually. Throughout the school year, we do a series of teacher webinars, Ticonderoga Tuesdays. So it's probably pretty obvious they take place on Tuesday evenings. It didn't take us very long to discover that we needed to do them at 6:30 p.m. our time so that West Coast teachers could join us if they chose to. We're just now starting to fill in our schedule for the 2023-2024 school year, but we already have programs scheduled in October, November, and next February. The October webinar is going to be focusing on Ethan Allen. You may be aware that the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution is approaching very quickly, and we're actually collaborating with the Vermont 250th Commission Education Committee to offer a few webinars related to the 250th anniversary of the Revolution. All of our Ticonderoga Tuesday webinars are free, so there's no charge for teachers. There's links on our website. You just click on the link and register. And the great thing about when you register through Zoom webinars is it sends you reminders. So it'll send you a reminder if you've signed up well in advance, a week ahead, a day ahead, and an hour ahead of the program. We also, if any of the teachers joining us today know of professors at the college level who teach the next generation of teachers, we also do a series of pre-service webinars for students training to become teachers. And we have one in October on using historic documents in the classroom and one in November on using historic objects in the classroom. So And though that's a great opportunity for us to work with the next generation of teachers as they're coming down the line. We have a virtual conference in January called Material Matters. It's in the details. And this is a just online conference that focuses on material culture, the objects of history. And you're going to get a sense of how we use those with our school programs later, that often it's an overlooked aspect of studying history, that the stuff of history sometimes is the only thing we have connecting to the unknown individuals of history. So Virtual Material Matters is a day-long program. We have teacher scholarships available for that. The deadline's December 10th, so well down the road. One of the great things about a completely virtual conference is our last Material Matters conference, we had presenters from India, Germany, France, and then Virginia and Wisconsin. So it really enables us to connect with the worldwide academic world out there and take advantage of different perspectives on history. I mentioned that we do 2 big academic programs each year. Every May we do the War College of the 7 Years' War, and I'm plugging next year already. This year's is coming up on May 19th, but the teacher application for teacher scholarships is actually today. So it's a little late for somebody in the next hour to submit an application for this year. But there's information online about this program this year. And again, there's a downloadable PDF of the brochure that's available, gives you a sense of the scope. The War College of the 7 Years' War looks at what we call the French and Indian War in North America, but the larger 7 Years' War across the world as well. And much like the seminar on the American Revolution, it attracts speakers from around the world. We have a speaker coming to join us in person from Serbia. We have someone coming to join us from France. We have somebody coming to join us from Scotland. And then we have Canadian and American scholars joining us for the weekend as well. It's a great opportunity just to immerse yourself in the history, get a lot of information, but it's also great, if you're able to do it in person, a great opportunity to network with not just historians, but the people in the room as well, which is a big mix of people who are interested in general in history. There's teachers in the room, there's retired military folks in the room. It's just a great opportunity and a great community. And the War College of the 7 Years' War has been around since 1996. So it's got a very loyal following, and we love to share that opportunity with educators as well. Saving my part for last is each year Fort Ticonderoga hosts the Fort Ticonderoga Teacher Institute. Application deadline for this summer is actually today as well. So that's why I've skipped ahead to 2024. But over the course of the week, we bring teachers to Fort Ticonderoga. It's a competitive application process, but accepted teachers don't have to pay a registration fee. We provide the experience Sunday afternoon until Friday afternoon, spending a week at Ticonderoga. With double occupancy, we provide housing. We provide a majority of the meals throughout the week, and we provide up to an $800 travel stipend to help teachers get to Ticonderoga and then get home again. I understand $800 isn't going to get a California teacher here, but it definitely helps with the expenses to get here. A teacher from Connecticut may not need all $800 to get here. So it's a great opportunity. Over the course of the week, we bring in visiting historians. Teachers get to work with a variety of our staff as well, our curator and our collections. They get to tour collection storage. They get to don gloves and actually examine objects in our collection up close. They get to spend time with Stuart, who you're going to meet shortly, and also with Stuart's public history staff, and really immerse in experiences related to the military experience here at Ticonderoga in the 18th century. I think two of the favorite immersive activities is getting out on Lake Champlain in an 18th century bateau. And Friday mornings, we rotate the teachers through 4 of our historic trades. So they get to spend about half an hour working with our shoemaker, with our tailor, in our maritime trades, depending what they're doing. They might be helping caulk a bateau or something like that. And then actually getting to practice or try to learn how to drive a pair of oxen. Mick and Mac are our on-site oxen who are here. So it's a great opportunity. And then the teachers go back to their classrooms, but they've met a group of teachers from all over the country, and there's friendships that just kind of endure. We've been doing on-site teacher programs here since 2011, and we've had over 400 teachers from all 50 states here now for that program. So that's something that's available as well. Stuart, I believe the next slide is yours, so I'm going to mute myself and let you turn your microphone on.
Thank you, Rich. I'll make sure Rich has got his mic off first. We love feedback, but that's not necessarily the type of feedback we want to get. I'm Stuart Lilly. I'm the Vice President of Public History here at Fort Ticonderoga. And over the last 5 years or so, we've been really working so that what we've offered here in terms of field trip offerings, immersive experiences, exploring our collections, interacting with our staff and all that we do, we try to bring that online. And since 2020, we've been expanding these offerings through what we call our Center for Digital History. Now, if you go to the educators page on our website, and you can see it right here, you can see some of the things we have for field trips. Our curator and Rich also do micro courses for college students. And Rich was also mentioning the professional development, like you can see at the bottom of the page here. But there's other things we have as well. Rich, if you go to the next slide. It does appear to be froze up. There we go. Now, in terms of lesson plans, these here, they are things that you can do in the classroom that relate directly to documents in our collection, but look at them in a fun way, whether it's looking at things that tangibly kids understand, whether it's food or simply what goes inside a soldier's knapsack. We have these, and they are all correlated with C3 curriculum goals for the different grade levels we have these at. And you can see on our lesson plans page, the wide variety that we have. And we're actually in the midst of adding 4 more of those to it, which should be available by the end of April. We also have some fun activities, and Rich, if we go to the next slide. Within our Center for Digital History, we have at-home activities.
I don't know where my blinkers are.
These at-home activities, they started out as something that we just offered to parents back at the start of the pandemic, when they were trying to teach or facilitate their child's learning at home. We came up with these activities that allow for more tangible exploration. You can see right here, we've got the banana powder horn, a way to play with scrimshaw in one's own home. And we've even got some fun videos online to go with it that actually instruct on how to do this. Likewise, too, activities like a soldier's mess began as an at-home activity, but now we actually have teachers who go ahead and use this in their classrooms as a way that they can go ahead and cook with their students, so that students can experience this part of what it was like to be a soldier. Rich, if we go to our next slide. Now, what we have reaching students from coast to coast with more and more these days are our virtual classroom outreach programs. These programs began either as on-site field trip experiences or as in-classroom outreach, which actually my great school and youth programs interpreters, they were in a classroom in Indian Lake, New York, midday today, bringing soldier's life into a 4th grade classroom there. Our goal is to use this, the virtual classroom studio that I'm in right now, to go ahead and deliver these eyes-on versions of our hands-on programs wherever students might be. Now we have these set up for different topics and for different grades. So we go to the next slide. This, for our upper grades, this is questioning history. Now the neat thing about questioning history, this is a chance to look at primary sources, whether they be journals, letters, or orderly books like we have in our collections, and have students formulate their own questions. These questions teachers then send to us, and we engage in an interactive discussion about their questions, trying to provide more context into what they've read in these primary sources, using more examples in our own museum collections here. I've got a couple examples from a recent program we did with some schools in Saratoga. So Rich, go to the next slide. These students, they wanted to know more about some documents from the 4th Pennsylvania Battalion, specifically this orderly book, which I've got photographed right here. They wanted to know about what orderly books are. There's an opportunity to not only talk about the information contained within this orderly book, but also what an orderly book is, how it functioned within the Army, and be able to correlate this with archaeological remains, including buttons labeled from the very regiment from whom this book survives, and to be able to correlate that with notable military figures of the Revolution, like Anthony Wayne, who ends up going all the way out to Ohio. He actually employs about 1,000 Kentucky mounted riflemen from 1792 to 1794. Just as a side, we are complete nerds here about all the incredible Ticonderoga connections we can find with states across the country, including you all in Kentucky. But further to this, and Rich, if we go to the next slide, we also are able to look at their questions about naval operations on Lake Champlain, using pieces like this swivel gun to explain to students when they discovered monkeys' tails in the midst of naval inventories, to talk about what this oddly named extra piece mounted on the back of a swivel gun to allow you to aim it, what it actually was, inspiring students to think critically, not only about primary sources, but also physical remains from the 18th century as presented from our museum collections. Rich, if we go to the next slide. Based on our survey feedback from teachers from 2020 through 2021, we created a provincial soldiers' life. This is all about the 7 Years' War, or commonly the French and Indian War. And within this program, because American soldiers serving as provincials alongside the British Army came from so many other colonies here to Ticonderoga, we were able to highlight local stories of soldiers as they relate to our story. And Rich, if we go to the next slide. Now, within a provincial soldier's life, and this happens to be for a New York provincial soldier, and this is what our virtual classroom studio would look like if one was standing over here, we are able to look at some of the recreated material culture we have. This musket here being the recreation of a special gun, what is not actually a government-made weapon. This is a commercially made copy of British guns, which were used by the thousands by New York provincial soldiers in 1758. As in a provincial soldier's life, we endeavor to look at the sources of supplies used by these soldiers as they relate to the entire Atlantic world. Rich, if we go to the next slide, the entire Atlantic world, which it just so happens is exactly where the various battles of the 7 Years' War are occurring. We're able to make the connection between supplies and their origins and the competition there for them. It was playing out throughout the French and Indian War, or global 7 Years' War. Now, Rich, if we go to the next slide. Now, we also have been eager to bring the hands-on experience of Maritime Artificer's Apprentice, that of being able to tangibly learn about the construction of boats, and also look at the global network of supply that allowed even a single large sailing vessel to be produced for the American fleet here in 1776. Within this, and Rich, if you go to the next slide. Within this, we take some of the activities like caulking the seams of a boat, wherein you are driving a tar-soaked oakum, hemp fibers, right into the seams between planks, where students can experience that in person. We get to show these trades online wherever students are with us. If we go to the next slide, far and away our most popular program is A Soldier's Life, which I'm going to go ahead and show you some pieces of it. A Soldier's Life, this is all about looking at the day in the life of a Continental Army soldier, using the tangible objects that we have recreated about it. So Rich, if we go ahead and stop sharing. All right, and then we should go right to me, especially if you are in speaker mode. Now, a soldier's life all begins with the inquiry-based supposition to students of trying to imagine all the things students bring with them if they are going camping today. That's a contemporary look at things that they might need. Normally, I would prod students and anyone participating online to go ahead and give me some ideas about what you might bring if you were camping today. I'm seeing everyone's muted, so I'll throw some of those ideas out there. Such things as tents. People, they bring sleeping bags. They bring food. They bring a lighter with them to start a campfire. They bring the backpack upon their back. Hopefully, they're smart enough to bring spare clothes. Things like toothbrush, hairbrush, or comb, and water with them. Using this as a starting point, then, we can go ahead and look at what these objects were or would have been back in 1775 or 1776. Much like a provincial soldier's life, with a soldier's life, again, with soldiers coming to Ticonderoga during our war for independence from so many states, we can look deep into the local stories of soldiers as they apply to our narrative here at Ticonderoga. Now, one of the basic challenges that any soldier has at this point is how are they going to carry stuff with them? I may have already mentioned this. I need some teacher to let me know, how do you think soldiers carried their stuff back then? Ms. Crosland, can you help us out?
I was going to say you all can unmute, or you can type in the chat box.
That's exactly what I usually say to students. Yes.
Or did you want me to help you out by guessing what they might carry things in?
You know, either way, you've done an exceptional service already, but yeah, what do you think soldiers carried their stuff in?
Their personal stuff?
Sure.
I think a backpack, a knapsack.
Yeah, exactly right. In fact, it's amazing. A lot of students will say knapsack with the context of, you know, that's what my folks call it. And yes, indeed, this is going to be the soldier's knapsack, which is not altogether different than what we carry today. It's got 2 shoulder straps made out of the same linen that the bag is made out of. Instead of zippers or other convenient clips, it's got 3 buttons that hold it closed. And indeed, the knapsack, is the limiting factor on so many of the things that soldiers carried back then. Now, one of the big exceptions to that, and it's actually right here because it's just that big, is going to be the tent. Now, we can't set up an entire tent here in our virtual classroom studio, but this is as small as it would roll up. So imagine this, your soldier's tent with the fork that sits at the top, or raise it up, and the ridge that sits at the top. This, your tent, when it's fully erected, is going to be about 6 feet by 7 feet at the bottom, 6 feet tall, but this is as small as it can possibly be rolled up. So the Army makes a deal with you. They will ship this tent along with the soldier, so long as the soldier agrees to share that tent with 4 to 5 other soldiers, when the Army is going to be known as your mess. It's also going to be with your mess that the soldiers would cook together. This being the tinned iron kettle carried by so many messes of soldiers in which you would cook your food. Now, often today, kids ask about a sleeping bag. And a sleeping bag, well, something like it exists. This, of course, back then, this is your closest equivalent, the blanket, which you might well bring from home. That heavy wool blanket that's so important, the Continental Army itself is going to offer you one of these as a bounty. Is to say a gift to you as an incentive for joining the service. One of my favorite things that soldiers bring with them is going to be this, several shirts. Now, the neat thing about shirts is not only is it perhaps the most hygienic tool that a soldier has, because they're rarely going to get to bathe, these are linen shirts that would soak up the grease and grime that inevitably builds up on you over the course of a day. This is going to be the cause for women. About 4 to 6 women for every single company. That's between 50 and 100 soldiers. Every one of these companies to have 4 women would serve as laundresses. Laundresses who would wash these shirts so that every single day a soldier puts on a clean shirt. Now, I think what's neat about laundresses, not just that they're women who follow the Army and are certainly an important part of the service, they are respected in as much as they are to be paid. And if you, a Continental Army soldier, fail to pay the laundress of your company, sergeants, those soldiers responsible for you, they would come along and take your money and make sure that the laundresses got paid. They also would draw a half ration of food like the soldiers would get. They would draw wood and water too. Now, what I think is really neat about this program is getting students to think about materials that were available back then, in contrast to materials which we take for granted today. Now, I have right here, this, of course, the soldier's toothbrush back in 1775. Doesn't really look all that different than what we have today, but it's as true for teachers as it is for students. What are these toothbrushes made out of today? It's crossing.
Not a trick question.
It's not a trick question. So today, 2023.
Plastic.
Plastic, exactly right. Of course, plastic does not exist in 1775. So what do you think this could be made out of? As good Kentuckians, I think you've handled an example of this recently. If anyone's had barbecue, you may well have handled this.
I'm guessing bone or wood.
Yeah, exactly right. In fact, it's rib bone. If you've had ribs lately, you've handled exactly the same thing as the handle of this toothbrush, ribs. The bristles on it, well, they're actually pig hairs. We call bristles, which have been bleached and stamped right into it. So this, which looks like our toothbrush today, pig hair and cow bone. That's true of an awful lot of things that are used back then. And it's a series of connections that students really love. Likewise, too, for imagining what we carry water in today. Vessels today that carry water, they're perhaps polished aluminum, stainless steel, or plastic, none of which exist back in 1775. So for the case of these New York soldiers, this is the vessel they're going to carry their water in. It's that canteen that's made out of sheet iron covered in tin. This tinned iron made into the form of a British canteen. Now, one of the things that I really like about virtual classroom programs, as opposed to our in-person programs, is what we can virtually bring to the classroom. Now, once we establish what a soldier is going to have in their tents and their personal items, we can go ahead and look at their arms that they would go ahead and don as they were preparing for duty in a way that's very, very challenging to get in the door at a school. Now, for just about every soldier, they're going to carry some sort of sidearm. Now, this sidearm right here is our bayonet, which can be used in its own right, but you can see that the hollow socket of it, which allows it to fit onto the end of our musket. This would be the first thing one would put on before you would go on duty, whether it's drill, guard, or simply on the march. You would next put on your cartridge box. Now this, a leather flap or leather pouch, it's on a leather strap. Inside of it, it has our cartridge. Cartridges being the pre-made ammunition. You've got right here, paper tube. Down at the bottom, you've got the bullet properly sized for the gun. Above that, enough gunpowder to both prime and load the weapon. And this is what folks often don't think of. The paper tube, it's not just the container, it's also wadding, what seals everything tightly in place. Useful though this is, it's tremendously delicate, especially when it's wet. So your cartridges, in this case, 19 of them, would ride inside a wooden block like this. This wooden block keeps the cartridges from getting mashed up. Carry this down at your right side so it's convenient when you go to load. And then along with it, most militia laws require you to have at least a pound of gunpowder with you at any time. This pound of gunpowder, you go ahead and carry inside a powder horn like this. Now, we don't think of it, but horn's a lot like the plastic of its time. You could heat it up, you could boil it. Once you had cleaned the guts out of it and it was hot, you could shape it into anything. You could even cut it into a flat sheet and make such intricate things as combs or the panes that would go in the windows of a lantern. This you would go ahead and carry above your cartridge pouch over onto your right side. On the top of that, you would have your canteen hang down to your left, back behind your sidearm. Now, one of the neat connections that we can bring to students is that connection of what soldiers would use to start fires is to say flint and steel. I've got right here, steel being a steel striker like I've got there, flint being the used gun flint that would come out of our guns. This we can make sparks, but it's this exact same idea as what we'd use in our musket. Again, this is something we can bring virtually into any classroom. It's really hard to bring in person. This, the flint, in the jaws of the cock or the dog, like you've got right here. This is on a very strong spring called the mainspring, which is held in check by the trigger down there. And then in front of this, we have an L-shaped piece of iron we call the hammer or battery. It's got a base of steel welded to it so that when this weapon's brought to full cock, the mainspring under tremendous tension. When I release that tension, the flint flies forward, scrapes against the steel, creating a shower of sparks. Sparks which fall right down into the pan which would hold that priming charge of powder, which upon contact with those sparks would ignite, burning through the touch hole into the main charge inside the barrel, which itself would explode, pushing our bullet or buckshot or whatever we've got right on out the muzzle. Now, one of the things that students love to learn more about, of course, food. Kids are usually hungry. It doesn't really matter what time of day it is. They're going to be hungry. We can talk about that. See the question. What was that question there?
He said, how often did a musket misfire?
Well, depends. Is it raining? Is it not raining? Is it night? Is it properly loaded? All these questions and more. With that said, the locks, is to say the firing mechanisms that they had back then, they were tuned so that you always got some spark. And so I'd say the rates that are documented back then are maybe 1 shot in 50 or 1 shot in 100 misfiring. Very, very little relative to the reproduction weapons we use today. Now, in terms of food, I'll see if you all can guess some of them. These are soldiers' rations. We got right here. You can see down into that bag. What do I have? Any one of my friends out there?
Looks like beans or black-eyed peas.
Yeah, beans or peas. Exactly how they even be described back then. I've got both in there. Let me give you another one. Mr. Slade there, see if you can help me out here.
Cornmeal, flour, salt.
In this case, it's just flour. It's wheat
Just
flour.
flour.
Good eyes right there. And anyone who can help me out on this one, I bet it probably looks like flour, but it's not. It's also not the key ingredient for a cup of joe either. Well, you all had enough snow. Some of you or some of your students might have enjoyed this after an afternoon of skiing or sledding. That's a good guess. It's not tea either, but we're on the right track.
What do you mean, cocoa?
Yeah, exactly right. This is drinking chocolate. The ground chocolate that would be consumed by soldiers, something which rather than being enjoyed at the end of the day, is something that was popular for breakfast. Like many soldiers write about breakfasting on chocolate. When with the amount of caffeine that's in this stuff, it would get you needing ready right from the get-go. Now, as different as these foods are, what do they all have in common? Sure, you all can tell me right away. You got flour, you got ground chocolate, you got dried peas and beans. They're all well, let me ask you this way. What did we lack in 1775 that we take for granted? You need some of that today. I get that. Yeah, because you don't have refrigeration. Exactly right, my friends on chat there. You don't have refrigeration. Now, the great thing is this is nothing new. In fact, it's an old problem by the time it gets to the Revolutionary War. So old that the Continental Congress itself takes this into account when they write will be a law in November. Joe, if we could bring that on up. Here we go. So as of November 4, 1775, every single day, Continental Army soldiers are supposed to get 1 pound of bread or 1 pound of flour. Now, frankly, in an army that doesn't have bakeries set up and the challenge of spoiling, that ration almost always comes to soldiers as flour. Every single day, they're supposed to get 1 pound of beef, which 3 days out of 4 is supposed to be salted. fourth day out of 4 is supposed to be fresh. If that was unavailable, the ration can come to them as 3/4 pound of salted pork. Now, per week, they're supposed to get 3 pints of peas or beans, 1 cup of cornmeal, 1 cup of rice, and then as it's available in discretion of the colonel, things like coffee, chocolate, tea, rum, molasses, onions, fresh vegetables, candles, tobacco, and soap. Now, what I think is really neat is to think about the quantity that's available and take students on this journey with us. So if they look at 1 day for a soldier, what they're supposed to get, well, you got 1 pound of flour. And then, boy, it makes the math a lot easier if they get 3/4 pound of salted pork, not the least of which this is bacon, which even as a good Yankee, I still like my bacon. Now, all the other things you get for a week, it'll come out to about 1/4 pound. Of course, makes 1 day really easy to calculate. We're looking at 2 pounds of food. Now, one of the neat correlations is a student's school year, 9 months, is roughly the same as what a soldier would enlist for back in 1775 and 1776. So we can, with students, extrapolate out exactly what this means. Now, if we take it 1 month at a time, well, and make it an easy month, say we've got 30 days in a month, and we know the soldier's going to need 2 pounds of food. 4th and 5th grade level, usually we get this shouted out pretty quickly, but we're looking at a soldier would need 60 pounds of food for a single month. Of course, they're not a soldier for just 1 month, they're a soldier for 9 months. And here, so we've got 60 pounds of food per 1 soldier per 1 month. Looking at 9 months, we get, of course, 60 times 9 gives us, usually there's 4 kids, we'll shout this one out. We got 540 pounds of food. But this, of course, begs the question, we're not talking about a single soldier in this army. Even if we take a regiment whose authorized strength is close to 700 soldiers, well, on average, they end up with about 300 soldiers in actuality. So we have 540 pounds per soldier, 300 soldiers. I guess it comes out to 162,000 pounds of food for a single regiment for a single campaign season. Now, what matters about this, though I think it's a fun, real-world exercise in using this math, it's not the exact amount of food, because that certainly varied at the time. It's what it means in terms of the scale of food that's needed. It begs the basic question, and I'm going to throw it out to you all. Well, if an army needs to get at least 162,000 pounds of food for 1 regiment of soldiers for 1 campaign season, how? How could they possibly move that much food? What do y'all think? This could be chat or unmuting, however you want to approach this. And I'll say that there's no wrong answers until we discuss it. Wagons, yeah. Took it from your surrounding area. Yeah, there's meat markets. Well, let's look at a wagon. That's a really good idea. Wagons are great. I mean, heck, Kentucky couldn't have been settled without them going up and over the Blue Ridge. Wagons carry about 4,000 pounds of food, about 2 tons. They don't go by themselves, because you got 4 horses or 4 oxen. Those 4 horses or 4 oxen, each one of them eats about 20 pounds of hay or other feed per day. Driver's going to need about 2 pounds of food per day. But, of course, you need roads. In your case, the Great Wagon Road will take you up and over the mountain passes to get across the Appalachians. Now, I can tell you, and no, we're getting onto it right now. Up here where we are, or really just about anywhere back in 1775, there aren't a lot of roads. And so another option, going by water. Now, in terms of water, we look at what was being used up here. It's going to be a bateau. This, the corruption of the French bateau plot. My English and American just called bateau, literally meaning boat. They're flat bottom, about 30 feet long, about 8 feet wide. And even though they're small, they can still carry about 5 tons. They don't go by themselves, though. You got a crew, perhaps 4 on the oars and 1 soldier on the tiller steering at the back. But if the wind was behind you, it was very common for soldiers to, every man, go ahead, unroll their blanket, hold it on up like a sail, and you could, with the wind at your back, go 100 miles in a day. Now, if you're a soldier up in this area, you want your food going by wagon, you want it going by bateau. I mean, to my mind, it's no contest. you want that food to go by bateau. It carries so much more food, and it can go anywhere there's water. And yet, if we look at where Ticonderoga is, well, this is part of what makes us important time and time again. The best way to get around is by water. The only practical way to move the thousands of pounds of food that soldiers would need is by water. And so Ticonderoga, which overlooks an important waterway pass here on Lake Champlain and where Lake George drains into it, time and time again ends up being crucial. No army can go past Ticonderoga without their boatloads of food being blocked by this strategic point. But I think what is neat about boats is not just that it is how food was getting around, but it's ultimately the defining feature of a soldier's experience. You don't necessarily march hundreds of miles. You row them seated upon the thwarts, the seats inside of a bateau. Your knapsack's not on your back, it's on the seat next to you. Your barrels of flour and beef, they're at your feet, along with your tent, as it's boats that define a soldier's experience. Now, if you want to come on back to me, my teacher friends, I want to thank you for joining me in this program. At this point, whether it's questions about Rich's professional development opportunities or what we offer in terms of student programs, I think we'd both be more than happy to field whatever questions you all might have.
It's a little bit of a quiet group, so I'm going to ask a question while you all are warming up. So if a teacher wanted to have this virtual experience for students, what's the first step?
The first step, and Rich, I think we'll send out some emails. We have an outreach coordinator, a fellow named Gordy Hamilton. Send a note to him, and we'll begin the process of booking which program you want and at a time that's mutually convenient. We've got, I think got a total about 85 programs already booked up, but we got a lot of days and a lot of slots. So we have plenty of room to take on more.
Could you possibly send that information through email, or are you all going to put that on the charging block, Jackie?
Yes, whatever, Rich, whatever you send to Wendy King, she will get that out to everyone.
Okay, yeah. I think the fifth graders at my school would absolutely love this.
And we would absolutely love to talk to your fifth graders.
I would love for some of you to be able to go there yourselves for there. I've noticed on the website lots of interesting things just if you go, but there's also those opportunities for week-long professional learning, that kind of thing. So that would be fantastic as well. And someone just said, yes, a history hero trip next year. So definitely, Julie, send that to Wendy.
I have 2 thumbs up for me.
Anybody else have other questions or anything you'd like to say at this point?
It was super fascinating. I'm driving, so I've not been able to really participate, but it's super cool. I love all the real life.
I know for us, fifth grade, our content is, colonization through the Constitution, and primary sources are a big part of that. So, the virtual field trip would be wonderful, this time of year, because the kids, they really, when we pull out the primary sources, we're limited to what we have, obviously. So we use a lot of pictures and a lot of internet resources. So it would be wonderful for them to see that. Definitely we'll be looking into it.
Yes, please. I will say though we created questioning history, primary source program targeting curriculum goals for grades 6 through 12. I've seen it used really well with fifth graders as well. Looking at a smaller sample set of primary sources, and then really working to illustrate them through tangible things like I've got here.
Jackie, I will plan to create an email to her that has links to different places on our website for different programs. And then she could share that with everybody, and that'll make it easier to find things on our website.
Okay, that sounds great. I just texted Wendy with that, basically that same message. She said, awesome, perfect.
I will put in a plug that Stuart and I are more than happy to respond to individual email questions if there's ways we can help teachers and their students as they're studying. So just because you don't see it on our website doesn't mean we might not be able to help. We can't help with the American Civil War, but if you keep it in 18th century, but we have a collection that stretches through much of the 17th century right up until about the War of 1812. So we've got a broader history than most people usually think of when they think of Fort Ticonderoga.
About how long are your virtual meets when you meet with classes like that? For field trip?
When I remember to unmute myself, we have usually between 30 and 35 minutes of kind of direct inquiry-based content. And then thereafter, between 10 to 20 minutes of question and answer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if we've reached the end of our questions, I will say on behalf of Fort Ticonderoga, thank you. I love talking to students. I love working with educators wherever they might be. And I want to thank you for joining us after your school day. So I'll leave Rich to any other final comments.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Stuart and I are in adjoining rooms, and if we both have our microphones on at the same time, we get really bad feedback. So yes, we are delighted that Wendy found us, and thank you for asking her how she found us. We are always willing to talk to groups of teachers to let them know what opportunities we have for them. And if anyone is interested in any of the things we've talked about, the school programs, the teacher programs, we'll be giving that info for the email to Wendy that she can distribute, and you can reach out to us. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yes, Wendy wanted me to make sure everyone knew. She said, tell you all that she will add it to the shared drive. I feel like I'm just passing the buck. I'm like, what did you want? And let me ask Wendy. So, but she always gets it taken care of. Before we do end today, I did put the evaluation link in the chat box, but does anyone have questions? And Rich, you may have something else that you want to share, but did anyone have any questions or anything that you need at this point? And thanks for that comment, Mary. I would definitely encourage you all to not only to check out the email, but go ahead while it's hot on your mind and check out the website. It's really well done and it's easy to navigate. So Rich, kudos to your team on that as well.
We have a very good team working on our website and a very good team working on the content, because without the content, your website doesn't mean a whole lot. Right. So thank you. And if you go to just fortticonderoga.org, there's a drop-down menu, Learn and Explore, and that's the place for teachers to go to. There's information there for programs about students, professional development for educators, ways to search our online database to check out our collection, which we continue to add to that online database. So there's lots of tools there, and come back and check out later because we continue to add new things to our website as well and add new programs. And as Stuart mentioned, we get feedback from teachers. The Provincial Soldier's Life came about because there was a request for it. So we're always looking for what teachers are looking for, what students need, and how we can help with that.
And I would encourage you all to, I think these state connections are really interesting, and I'm sure they would be happy to help you make those kind of Kentucky connections too. I mean, kids love that. It's a great way. I love it. It's a great way to bring all of that sort of together. All right, does anybody have anything else? Trying to use my teacher wait time. This is a bit of a quiet bunch, but I see in the chat lots of thank yous. I feel the same way. This has been really interesting, and I appreciate the hands-on experience that you gave us this evening.
And I know Stuart and I would be happy to do this with another group of teachers at a future date.
Great. I'll tell Wendy.